Welcome to the Sparkspace Podcast, Season 2, where we continue to search for a lost spark, one clue at a time. In the past few episodes, we've uncovered whispers of something gone missing. A name. But this time, it's not just missing. It's been erased. And now we have more questions than answers. Why would someone go to the trouble of erasing a name from history, from documents that should be unchangeable? And what does it mean when a name vanishes without a trace? It's not just about a missing person anymore. It's about something bigger. Keep listening. We're diving deep today, and the answers might shock you. We've been on the trail since episode 1, where we discovered a name that had been missing. We were given nothing but a letter, B, and it seemed like we were heading toward a dead end. But in episode 2, we learned something darker, that the name was erased from the records, wiped out from history itself. This was no mistake. This was deliberate. So, what do we have today? A corporate contract. Official, binding, the kind of document that shouldn't be tampered with. But sometimes, things are altered in unexpected ways. What happens when a name, someone's identity, is scratched out from a contract like it never existed? The truth might be closer than we think. Corporate contracts may seem boring, pages of legal jargon that most people ignore. Terms and conditions, anyone? But in these pages, there are clues, and when a name is erased, it's not just a typo or a small oversight. No, this is a statement. Something was removed for a reason. But what? We've been told that contracts can be manipulated, changes made in the background, out of view, where no one can see. This isn't just about a name. This is about something more. Something buried in the fine print, waiting to be discovered. Why was this name erased? And why does it matter? A name wiped away. A contract left incomplete. Whoever did this wasn't just erasing ink. They were erasing someone's place in history. But here's the thing about the law. What's written down can define everything. And what's erased? That might tell us even more. To understand just how much power a single contract holds, let's step inside the mind of someone who knows the stakes better than most. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Joseph M. Kemp, a multifaceted professional whose career spans law, education, entrepreneurship, and beyond. As a lawyer, educator, and entrepreneur, Joe has made significant strides in various industries, including big tech, corporate law, venture capital, and Fortune 500. He's the creative mind behind Disbarred, the card game, a groundbreaking game that makes learning about the law both fun and accessible. Joe is also the author of Grad School Admission Secrets, a comprehensive guide to gaining admission to top graduate programs. And currently, he's also working on an inspirational memoir set to be revealed in March. And beyond his professional endeavors, Joe co-founded JD's and Cocktails, curating sophisticated networking events for professionals across various fields. So he's done a lot. So welcome, Joe, to the Sparkspace Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yes, I've done a lot.
So, first question, I guess, focusing kind of on your lawyer background, what inspired you to become a lawyer? And was it like always your dream career?
Yeah, so I would say, growing up, I kind of got it as a suggestion from someone. And, I looked into it, did more research. I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. I love the legal dramas and things like that. However, that's not real life. But, going through emotions, seeing different things and doing different internships. Like I got to do something in college. I did a couple different things where I'm like, okay, I think this could be sort of a lifestyle that I would enjoy. So at first I was thinking, okay, I'll probably do corporate law, working with big companies and things like that. And, I further refined it down because my passion is entrepreneurship. My passion is being in that ecosystem. And I've been in that ecosystem since I was a child. So I actually did corporate law for venture capital firms and startups. So that's what I did when I was practicing. Obviously I'm still a lawyer by trade, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of really what prompted it. And, of course, I'm first generation everything. So I had to go and learn everything myself and really figure out what is the right career for me. And I also needed, definitely, I'm not going to shy about it or shy away from the main point is that, being a corporate lawyer does pay a lot. So, I help take care of my family and different things like that. So that's another, important reason in the whole thing. And I guess one last thing is I really loved philosophy as a major and I did very well. And they did say it was going to be very, what is it? Very like law school and like this using the same skills. So I think that's how it came. That's the culmination of everything. And that's what led me to my legal career.
Wow. Okay. I don't know too much about, I guess, corporate lawyer and like, so you represented just basically like different startups and companies.
Yeah. So what I did. So what the corporate lawyers generally do who work on like the transactional side is, we're doing contracts for different companies and different things like that. And for me, what I was doing specifically, or the bulk of my work, was doing venture financing. So I would represent investors and also startups. And, when investors want to invest in a startup, we have to, reduce that to writing and things like that. So I would do that stuff. And when startups, they also need someone to represent them also when they're getting, this money. Additionally, I worked I helped startups from formation to exit. So from the time I formed many companies myself, and then toward the end, when they want to be acquired or if they want to go public. So I did kind of the whole
process.
A to Z. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Is there anything about being a lawyer that most people don't realize?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I think people realize that, but it's not, I don't think you can fathom it until you get into it. It's a lot of work. And it's not, it's a lifestyle, right? And I think that you have to purposely kind of choose to live the lifestyle, especially when you're doing corporate law. And especially when you're doing it at a big law firm, right? There's many different types of law that people can practice. But yeah, I think that might not be another realization, that people don't know that there's so many types of law that one can practice. So, you just got to kind of find your niche within the industry, and hope that's brings the lifestyle that you want to have. So I think that's one thing is I don't think people grasp the lifestyle of, at least corporate lawyers, I would say.
Yeah. And what kind of led you down to being a corporate lawyer? Did you just kind of...
Yeah, I felt like that would be the most, I guess, interesting to me, based on some of the experiences I've had. Like I did a fellowship before I went to law school where I got to do a lot of litigation work. So those are the folks that go to court and, write the motions and different things like that. I didn't love that, even though that's the lawyer I probably originally wanted to be. But I didn't love that work. So I said, okay, corporate law is more fun, more interesting, working on these different types of deals and then refining it further again, working on the deals within my ecosystem of entrepreneurship and startups in that world, Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. But that's good to know. Like you had an idea at first that you like want to do this certain type of law, but then you explore that and you're like, no, that's not for me. Exactly. So I think that's important to take note, because my podcast is basically about like people finding their spark, what interests them career wise. But I always want to make it known, like, just because you have one spark doesn't mean you might have a different one later on.
There you go. Absolutely.
And I guess people might be interested in being a lawyer. Is there any tips you would say for like law school, or like if you are interested in really being a lawyer, that you would give?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say definitely get the experiences in, if you can, and however way you can. Join any high school programs, law school prep programs, and things like that. So you kind of get a real view of what it means to be a lawyer. So if that means working as a paralegal, if that means doing different fellowships where you get to see the work and, interact with the people, I think that's very key. If you're already committed to doing it, going to a quote unquote top law school is very important in terms of your job opportunities. Not that it's the end all be all, but that's something that the profession really values. And I think what I would say is, do a lot of research. You're going to see a lot of answers that say don't go. You're going to see a lot of answers that say do go. Yeah. But really it comes down to, you need to see what it looks like to be an actual attorney. So you should be getting those experiences to ensure that this is the right path, because you'll be devoting your, not in all cases, but in many cases, you'll be devoting your whole, 40, 50 years of your career to this profession. So.
Wow. And I don't know personally, like all the law rules, but do you have to go to law school and like pass the bar for every type of lawyer that you know of?
So it depends on a state, actually.
Oh.
So, how Kim Kardashian is able to take the bar
Yeah.
exam. Yeah, so they have to do an apprenticeship in certain states where they don't have to so in lieu of law school, you'll be able to take the exam, but you'll still have to shadow an attorney for a couple years before you can sit for the actual bar and then be a practicing attorney.
Oh,
but for most states, you'll have to take the bar exam. You have to do any state-specific, exams and additional tests, as well as go to an ABA accredited law school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then I know you created this game, Disbarred, the card game. Can you talk more about that? Like what inspired you to create it, and a little bit more what it's about?
Okay, of course. It's a perfect segue from talking about the bar, because that's actually what inspired it. But so the company is Games That Matter, and essentially our mission is to create games that are, I don't want to say it just like how it is, but our purpose is to create games that matter, right? So, we're creating these games where as you're playing, you're picking up tools and tips and just things that you should know, essential knowledge. And, the secondary portion of it is that each box we sell of our games will be donated. A portion of the proceeds will be donated to students in need, right? So for this, our first title, which is Disbarred the card game, is we designed it to teach high-level law things that everyone should know, like who can I sue? What can I sue for? What are my criminal law rights? What are my, how to create a valid will, how to create a valid trust, what makes a contract binding, things like just high level things that people should know, also with some pop culture references, of course. So we will throw in some Johnny Cochran in there, Elle Woods, the more recent ones like Suits, Harvey Specter, just stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And the goal is for you to kind of just play the game and pick up things as you're playing, right? So it's like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing, right? I didn't know that was law. You're picking it up as you're playing, and you're not realizing you're learning. So that's really the goal with the game. So we've created it to be very replayable and things like that. So by the time you've played it a couple times or with some friends, you'll learn some things that you can apply to real life and the real world, as you should as a citizen living, pretty much anywhere. You should know kind of
the basic laws.
Yeah, the basic law and what governs sort of your being. And then, again, with Disbarred the card game, we're also giving back to students in need. So a portion of the proceeds will be going to organizations that are supporting pre-law and law students with bar exam and LSAT prep, as well as other funding opportunities for them. So we wanted to make sure to, mitigate the barriers to entry to the profession, because, first of all, you have to do 7 years of school just to be a lawyer, have to take the bar, have to take several exams. And, it's a long and hard journey and an expensive journey at the same time, right? So we want to give back in that way too, while equipping the public or empowering the public with knowledge of their rights. And then I'll say how the idea came about was I was studying for the bar exam, actually, and this was like 3 or 4 weeks before you had to take it. So you have to sit there and lock in for a good 2-ish months and just study all day, every day. And you have to do that. And especially during the time I graduated, it was critical that I passed the bar, because, some firms were, not hiring the folks or rescinding or not giving the folks their offers who didn't pass the bar during that time when I graduated, right? Because it was an economic uncertainty. So usually, some firms will give you a couple tries, but in that time, honestly, some places were looking for reasons to kind of cut costs, let's say it like that, right? So with that being said, I knew it was very critical for me to pass. Well, it's critical in all cases because you need it to practice.
Yeah.
But basically, as I was studying for it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. It's grueling. I've never studied for anything like this in my life. And, I have 4 degrees.
Yeah.
This was still the hardest thing, in my opinion. And as I was sitting there, I'm like, I was going through my flashcards and I'm like, man, I wish there was like a game or some way like I can go with friends and sit down who are studying for the bar, and we could sit here and learn this stuff together in a fun way, not a way where it's like, okay, I know I'm reading a flashcard, so it's not fun,
Yeah.
you know? So that's how the idea came about. And obviously there's a lot of, more detailed things for the bar exam, of course, that, not everybody needs to know in the public, and not everyone will kind of understand, because it's just very, we're in the nitty gritty when you're studying for the bar exam, which is still considered high level, funny enough. But, a little bit later, I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, this is actually a good idea in terms of there are some things in here that everyone should know, and they're not too into the weeds of law, but just kind of high level things, again, that I mentioned before. My criminal law rights. How can a police officer talk to me? Things like that. How can I write a valid contract, a valid will? If I get hurt, how can I sue? What are the elements that allow me to have a case to sue, right? Because some people don't even go to attorneys. They'll get hurt and like, okay, I guess I can't do anything. There's 4 elements you got to satisfy, right? And you can be like, okay, you know what? I played this game. I learned this stuff. Maybe I should go talk to an attorney, right? Just to see, right? Things like that. And then, even landlord-tenant stuff we have in there too, right? What are my rights as a tenant? What are my rights as a landlord? Like, you have certain rights as well. So, just high-level things that I learned during the bar that I think, really could be applicable to everyday life. But I will also tell you, and I know now I've went on a kind of a tangent, but
no, this is great.
Excellent. I'm a lifelong gamer. Also, I love video games. I love board games, and I love, I love that social activity. So for me, I really prioritize making this game as replayable as possible. So it's not like, okay, I'm reading a card and it's like, oh, it's a multiple choice. So once you see it again, you already know the answer. It's not going to be something like that. Disbarred is not that, right? It's going to be a great way to think about it is like, it's a family-friendly version of Cards Against Humanity with a legal twist and even more replayable. That's what I would say.
Oh, okay. I like that. Because that's what I was going to ask more about. Like, okay, how do you exactly play it? But that's good.
Exactly. So it's literally kind of the same concept. You have a reader, and then you go around, figuring out who has the best answer based on the prompt, right? And we have even like performance cards. Like, one will be perform your best bend and snap, right? Choose somebody to perform that, right? And if they don't know it, guess what? You get the card and you get the points, right? So, there's dynamic gameplay within Disbarred. And that's for the reason of making it fun, because I don't want to play, I don't want to play a board game about law, to be honest with you. And I'm a lawyer, right? But that's why I want to make it fun, engaging, and like, okay, this is cool. I'm learning some stuff along the way, but I'm also having fun. Like, this is a real game that I bring to board game nights, Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really awesome, because that's a need that, when I'm thinking about, entrepreneurship, like, that's a need that you're meeting that I feel like a lot of people don't think of. And when you were just thinking about like, oh, you have to study for the exam, and like, oh, this should be fun. Like, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
I'm excited to play. I really have to order this because there's a lot, like you say, I'm like, there's such a need for the public to know about law. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a lawyer. And I'm always like, oh, I need to hire a lawyer, but it would be cool to also know things on your own and be informed.
Know some high level things where it's like, okay, again, like, if I fall down, if I get hurt, you don't have to, in some cases, or in a lot of cases, you don't have to pay if that's someone else's fault,
Yeah.
And some people don't know. They'll just keep going about their business when it's like, no, like, people are responsible for their negligence, things like that. So.
And then a question about the bar exam, I guess, specifically.
Yes.
Is it all the same? Like, even if you're a different type of lawyer, you're going to practice a different type, like the bar exam is a standard test?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So there's okay. So what I will say is, the bar. So no matter what type of law you want to do, you have to kind of learn all the topics on the bar exam, and they have something called the uniform bar exam. So most states administer that test, and that's kind of like a high level sort of exam. Some states administer their own bar exam. So I think is California one of them? I believe California is one of them. So you have to take the California bar exam. And then, because the states want to ensure their laws, because the bar exam is not law goes by state by
Yeah.
state. Federal has their own, system as well. So what they'll do is they'll also administer another test. So for New York, for example, you have to take the bar exam, the uniform bar exam, and then you have to take the New York law exam. And then everyone has to take another exam called the MPRE, which is an ethics exam, because lawyers are held to different standards and we have a different ethical code than, I guess, the general public, if you will. So yeah, so that's what you have to do. And a lot of states you'll have to do at least 2 to 3 exams just to be barred.
Wow.
On top of graduating law school and undergrad and et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, if you want to be a lawyer, it sounds like a long,
it's a long
investment. Long process with investment. Kind of like being a doctor. I feel like it's a long, you have to really be committed. But it's possible. Okay.
Yes.
And then I think about it like lawyers. I know you were like corporate lawyer. But like, do you ever feel like a detective in your work, like with uncovering like details if you're like solving complex problems? Is that possible? Like, is that in your practice at all?
Yeah, I would say so, because a lot of the things that you do, a lot of our job is also issue spotting, right? So we operate from precedent for most of the contracts, but if there's any unique sort of situations going on, you have to spot these issues, right? Some of the work that I used to do is diligence on behalf of venture funds. So the companies that invest in startups, I would have to go through the startups, all of their documents and see whether, everything checks out, number one. And two, if there's anything that didn't check out, I have to go back to this company, the startup, and say, hey, these shares weren't issued right, or I didn't find a document saying that you issued this, this stock, whatever, things like that. So like there's a lot of things that you have to go through in terms of at least doing diligence. Same thing with the litigators, they have to do something called doc review. So they're going through documents, trying to find different evidence or different, points that can help their case essentially. So yeah, so it's sort of like that, because, that's what I want lawyers to be, very detail oriented and things like that, because you really have to, every line, every word counts in everything that you do, right? Especially in these contracts. So yeah.
So no skipping the terms and conditions.
No, not at all.
That's good. Wow. Okay. Is there any like common legal mistakes you would say that people make that we don't even realize that you would like give a tip of?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say, I don't know if there's something common just because, I'm practicing a particular niche, but even with like Disbarred is the same thing as like, even growing up, I didn't know like who I can sue and for what. I just know that people can sue for things, and, essentially you could sue for anything, but you can't really for real, because the court will throw it out. And confine you for doing stuff that's frivolous. But essentially, just knowing, again, like, I live in New York, so, there's places that are icy. Like one time my mom fell on in a parking lot in a building that was owned by whoever. I wasn't sure whether she can sue. I didn't know. I was an undergrad, don't know what the elements are. You can Google stuff, but sometimes it's not like that helpful because you get a lot of information.
Yeah.
But now I know, she probably could have at that time, right? And this is how people are held responsible for certain actions, and this is how people get a redress for any issues that happen. She probably couldn't actually, because she didn't get hurt, but if she got hurt, that's the damages element, right? So from there, different things like that. So just knowing kind of those things, I think people don't know. Like they might think, and usually the advice that I have is you talk to a lawyer always, because actually most lawyers have, depending on if you want to do torts, which that incident that slip and fall is under torts.
Oh.
You just call a lawyer, because a lot of them have free consultations. So you just talk to them and see whether you have a case. So if you think you do, just call and see, because you know what? If you have a case, that can be a great, for any issues that happened or anything like that, that could be a great payout for you, which you deserve, So things like that.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's good, listeners, to note that, a lot of lawyers have free consultations. So if you think about it and you're unsure, just try to talk to one and see.
Exactly.
And I know laws like are constantly changing and things too. So does that mean like you have to? Do you ever have to retake the bar or like re-examine, take another exam because laws are always kind
Um,
of? Well, I
yeah,
guess they don't shift too much, but
yeah, I think you have to stay on top of the education. So they have something called continuing legal education that you have to meet a requirement every year for. And then to renew your bar, you have to have that and, pay a fee. Or
okay,
to renew your license to practice, I should say. If you want to go to another state, you'll likely have to take another bar if you can't waive in. So you would have to take another exam,
wow.
unfortunately. But yeah, that's how it works.
And how long does the bar are you certified or like with the bar until you have to
Um,
re?
it's yearly, so you have to renew
Oh,
it every year.
every year. Okay.
Hmm.
Wow. And then I know practicing law and being a lawyer, it can be, tough, sometimes with the different, I know corporate law, maybe, I mean, you still have situations that can be stressful. Like, how have you kept your spark or like interest in it?
Yeah, well, I would say, to me, because now I'm not practicing
Yeah.
currently, or
Yeah.
the practice that I'm doing right now is with Games That Matter, actually. So I
Yeah.
do all the IP, I do all the contracts and things like that. So I'm practicing in that regard. I would say the interest for me, just I guess now in my career, because I'm not,
Yeah.
let's see, I don't want to say I'm not interested in law, but I'm interested in sort of
A different
using
way.
the law. Yeah, exactly. I'm interested in using the law to achieve things now, I would say. So for me, that's, and, back to my company, starting the company, doing the trademark applications, I do all the IP, the vendor agreements and things like that. Having the background is very helpful in terms of me scaling my company and growing my company, as well as making it official in all capacities, right? So for me, it's been able to allow me to have my own freedom without paying sort of costs that I don't need to pay for.
Yeah.
Obviously at a certain point, I will need lawyers
Yeah.
for myself, but right now I don't, because I can handle a lot of the work that I'm doing. So that's how it's helped me kind of fulfill my own goals and dreams. And also being the founder, right? So that's
Yeah.
how I'm using it as sort of a stepping stone or a catalyst to unlock my own freedom, financial and personal freedom. So,
That is awesome.
yeah.
And then I didn't even where can they get listeners get your game?
Yes, so you can get it at www.disbarredthegame.com. And it's available for pre-order right now. And additionally, you can check us out on Instagram at disbarredthegame. And yeah, that's where folks can get it now. And I think I'll also give a Sparkspace discount, for any
Hey.
listeners. So you can use the code Sparkspace for a discount on Disbarred the card game.
Awesome. Wait, so when is it released? You say?
So it's supposed to release by December, but I will say we're working on an accelerated timeline. So it might be sooner than that, much sooner than
Oh,
that. But December is when you can expect it, the latest.
okay. That's exciting. I'm definitely gonna get it because this is,
Amazing.
yeah, definitely needed. I guess any last tips, advice to the public you want to give
Yeah.
about your journey or that you've learned along
For
the way?
sure, for sure. And I'll relate it to the podcast. When you find that spark, go for it, right? You have a lot of opportunities in life, and I think some people are a little fearful, like I was fearful in undergrad to do different things. And I think not that that has held me back, but go for whatever you want to go for. Go for your wildest dreams. I think people, we've seen a lot of this, especially in the last few years with manifestations on Twitter and, all these kind of things. Like,
Yeah.
just go for it because you never know. If you quote unquote fail, it's really never a failure because you have learned a lot, and you learn a lot about the people around you, learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about how to do whatever it is that you set out to do. That's that's the biggest, piece of knowledge you can get, essentially.
Yeah, I
So
love that because that's something I even thought about when I was starting this podcast. It was like there's a quote I don't know by who, but it's like you regret more of what you don't do than what you do.
that part.
So
Yep. Absolutely. So totally support, going for your goals and dreams, because guess what? No dream is too big to have. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. This was awesome.
yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
A huge thank you to Joseph Kemp for joining me today. The legal world is full of high stakes, decisions, fine print, and unexpected turns. Sometimes the smallest details hold the biggest consequences. It's always fascinating to hear from someone who's navigated that world firsthand. But as we close the book on today's conversation, one question still lingers. Why was this name erased? And why does it matter? As we continue investigating, one thing is clear. The missing name is important. Erased from a corporate contract, wiped from records, gone without explanation? Could this be just a mistake? Nah, I think there's something darker at play here. A cover-up? A lost identity? What happens when your spark, your identity, your passion is taken from you? Is it possible for someone's entire existence to be rewritten, erased from history, from documents that were supposed to preserve their truth? It's almost as if the name never mattered to the ones who erased it. But what if it wasn't about the name at all? What if it was about something else? What if this name, this missing identity, was erased because it was too powerful, too dangerous for someone to remember? The question we have to ask ourselves is, why does this matter? Why are we even focusing on a missing name in the first place? It's not just about a name. It's about what that name represents. Could it represent a spark? A passion? A sense of self that has been hidden, erased, silenced? This is bigger than a corporate contract. It's about the loss of something important. Something that has the potential to change everything. What happens when your spark is lost, erased, buried so deep no one even knows it exists anymore? How do you rediscover it? How do you find your identity when someone is trying to take it from you? We don't have all the answers yet, but I think we're getting closer. As we wrap up today's episode, the mystery remains redacted. We've learned that a name was erased. But why? What does it mean for the future of this investigation? And who, or what, is behind this effort to make someone disappear? In legal terms, this isn't just an omission. It's an intentional act. A name doesn't just vanish from a contract. It's stricken, voided, expunged. Someone wanted this name gone, removed like a clause that no longer served its purpose. But here's the thing about contracts. Even deleted clauses leave a trace. A missing name doesn't mean it never existed. It means someone didn't want us to find it. So I have to ask, what happens when you challenge a redaction? When you contest an erasure? In the next episode, we're going to do just that. Appeal the missing spark. Because something tells me this case is far from closed. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Spark Space Podcast. We'll be back next time with more evidence, more buried truths, and more twists in this quest for the lost spark. Until then, stay curious, examine the fine print, and remember, silence in a contract speaks volumes.